When you pick these two phones up, you'd immediately notice that they feel very different. Now that's because both brands OnePlus and Motorola, they've gone for very different design languages. On one hand, you've got the OnePlus Nord 3, which is trying to be better than its predecessor in every way possible. It's got the larger, higher resolution screen, a higher capacity battery, a nice looking glass back, but the focus for OnePlus here doesn't really seem to be on the ergonomics of the whole thing. The glass back, for example, it's slippery, it picks up fingerprints and smudges a lot easier. The front, the back, the sides, they're all flat, which leads to a very boxy design that's not too comfortable to hold. Now on the other hand, with the Edge 40, Motorola is kind of going for the total opposite of it. They've gone about putting together a device with a lot of attention on the comfort factor. The Eco Leather back, for example, it adds to the grip, it doesn't pick up fingerprints or smudges. The back, the display, they both curve at the edges, making the phone feel slimmer than it actually is. It's very noticeable given the phone's already 0.6mm slimmer than the Nord 3. Not just that, it's also a good 20 grams or so lighter. That said, the display is indeed smaller and the battery capacity lower. But given we are talking about design and ergonomics here, let's go ahead and put a pin on that. Now Motorola offers an IP68 rating, which is definitely better than the IP54 on the Nord 3, and the sides, again, we get metal compared to plastic. While neither phone offers support for microSD or a headphone jack, it's worth noting that Motorola has gone for a single SIM plus eSIM combination compared to support for two physical SIMs on the OnePlus. Now, though I prefer dual physical SIMs, I find them more convenient. The ergonomics, the Eco Leather back, the sleekness, the IP68 rating, that just cannot be ignored. So this round, I'm gonna have to go with the Motorola Edge 40. Now before we move on to the next one, hey guys, my name's Ash, you're watching C4E Tech. If you find this video useful, I'd really appreciate you dropping a like. Next, let's talk displays. Here we have two different sized panels. The Edge 40 uses a 6.55-inch 8-bit plastic OLED panel with a Full HD Plus resolution and 144Hz refresh. Now the Nord 3 on the other hand, it sports a larger 6.74-inch 10-bit OLED panel with a higher 1.5K resolution, meaning it's sharper by about 50 pixels per inch. The refresh rate not as high, but still a very respectable 120Hz. Now the Nord 3's panel, it also happens to be brighter. It's got a peak of 1450 nits in comparison to 1200. OnePlus have also gone for Asahi Dragon Trail glass protection, while Motorola has chosen not to use any name brand protection whatsoever on the Edge 40. So barring the refresh, the Nord 3 wins on everything else here. The refresh, that I don't see it as a big deal. Now yes, sure, if OnePlus was using a 60Hz panel and Motorola had gone for 144, then you could say this is a huge improvement. But 120 to 144, especially when this phone has a mid-range chip on the inside, I don't see that as a big deal, at least not in the larger scheme of things. So I'm still gonna go with the Nord 3 for display. Now that chip that I touched upon, let's talk about that. And this is a massacre. The Nord 3, though it has some issues, it's hands down the winner here. It's not that the Edge 40 has a bad chip. In fact, it's got a very good MediaTek Dimensity 8020 on the inside, which has been paired with a respectable 8 gigs of LPDDR4X RAM and 256 gigs of UFS 3.1 storage. That's on the base, the only variant that Motorola has on offer. But OnePlus, for the first time on a Nord phone, they've gone for a flagship chip, the Dimensity 9000, and that's paired with 8 or 16 gigs of faster LPDDR5X RAM, alongside 128 or 256 gigs of the same UFS 3.1 storage. Now, given it's a mid-range chip taking on a flagship, the results aren't going to surprise anyone. The Nord 3 easily wins. While having a performance advantage is great, sustaining said advantage, that's also pretty important, and here's where the Edge 40 shines. Now, both phones can and do get warm when you push them, but after say 20 minutes of continuously pushing the GPU, like here with the 3D Mark Wildlife Extreme stress test, the Edge 40 barely throttled. So in real life, if you were to play a game, a graphically intense game on the Edge 40, it's gonna run just as well as it did at the start, 20 minutes after continuous gaming. Now, on the other hand, the Nord 3, it does throttle a lot. At the end of 20 minutes with the same test, you can see that it's lost about half its original performance. But here is the but. Now, don't just look at the stability percentages, look at the actual scores. The Nord 3's flagship chip, yes, it's running at 50%, but even at 50%, it's pretty much the same score as the Edge 40. It's very close. So even when it's running half throttle, it's still able to match the performance of the Edge 40. That's because it's got that flagship chip. Now, to be fair, the Dimensity 9000 versus 8020, it's not a fair competition at all. So despite the rubbish stability, I'm still gonna have to give this one to the Nord 3. With user experience, both phones are running on Android 13 with their custom skins on top. Motorola's UI is closer to stock and comes with some fan favorite features like gestures to turn on the flashlight and cameras. Motorola promises 2 years of Android version updates and 3 years of security patches, and for the most part, the user experience was fine. With day-to-day use, the 8020 almost always managed to push the higher refresh. Now, on the other hand, with the Nord 3, the interface, yes, it is a little further away from stock, but unlike with other ColorOS derivatives, there's very little bloat here. OnePlus just includes a few common apps that are easily uninstallable, so the user experience was every bit as snappy here too. In fact, I'd call it a little better. Even those very rare frame drops with day-to-day use that I'd see on the Moto, they weren't present here. The Dimensity 9000 really excels, and the icing on the cake is the fact that OnePlus offers 3 years of Android version updates and 2 years of security patches, so one whole extra year of support. And just for that, I'm gonna give this to the OnePlus Nord 3. Now with battery, the H40 sports 4400 mAh. The battery life on it, it's slightly above average. I haven't spent enough time with the Nord 3 to give you a concrete take on battery life, but initial impressions, it feels like it's at least 10% better than what the H40 has to offer. Now with charging, the H40 has an advantage in the form of wireless charging support up to 15 watts. That's something the Nord 3 lacks. But with wired charging, the Nord 3 does come with a 17% faster charger, 80 watts compared to 68. It also has a 14% higher capacity battery. So in the end, the charging times aren't very different. Full charge takes 32 minutes on the Nord, 40 minutes on the Moto. So now with that, it's time to talk cameras. The H40 has a dual camera setup compared to triple cameras on the Nord 3, but the third sensor is a useless 2 megapixel macro that we're gonna pretend doesn't exist. So now the primary on the H40, it's a 50 megapixel 1 by 1.55 inch sensor from OmniVision that's paired with an optically stabilized f1.4 lens. On the Nord, it's again yet another 50 megapixel sensor, but this time it's a larger 1 by 1.32 inch sensor from Sony, the IMX890, that's also been paired with an optically stabilized lens, but with a f1.9 aperture. Under good light, both cameras perform well. Here, I was really surprised to see the Moto do better. Now, when you zoom in a lot, the H40 seems to retain a tad more detail, but that's not it. What sells me on the Moto are the colors. They seem more natural. The Nord 3 tends to have a pinkish hue on some images. The H40 has slightly better dynamic range too. Honestly, I didn't expect this. Motorola is using an OmniVision sensor that they don't even publicly name, whereas on the Nord 3, OnePlus has been very proud to talk it up, say they've got that flagship Sony IMX890. It's also got a flagship ISP nonetheless. Now under low light, if you look at the results, you'd notice they are very comparable. It's impressive that Motorola is managing to keep up despite having a smaller sensor. I understand the aperture is faster, but still, this is pretty impressive. Now though the results are comparable, the capture times are not. The Nord 3 only takes half the time as the H40 to shoot night mode. Now this is thanks in large to the flagship chip inside. With video, once again, that chip helps the Nord 3 do 4K 60, while the H40 is limited to 4K 30. The actual footage though, it's more stable on the Motorola, so despite the lack of 4K 60, I'd still choose the Moto footage here. With ultra-wides, we have a 13 megapixel sensor on the H40 going up against an 8 megapixel sensor on the Nord 3. Once again, Moto manages to stay ahead. First, it's got better range, and when you zoom in, you can also see there being more detail. Notice how the lines here look almost like they were drawn on the Nord. With selfies, 32 megapixels on the H40 going up against 16 megapixels on the Nord 3. Now this one's almost too close to call. The H40 does capture more natural images that have a tad more detail, but I still say too close to call because the brighter tones on the Nord 3, while not exactly natural, they might look more pleasing to the eye. That's it guys, optics, I'm gonna have to give it to the Motorola H40. Now with that we get to the pricing, and this is yet another win for the H40, given it is cheaper by 4,000 to 8,000 rupees depending on how you see it. Because 8256, Motorola is priced it at 30,000 rupees, OnePlus on the other hand charges 34,000 for the base 8128, and if you want 256 gigs you're gonna have to forgo an extra 38,000 rupees. Now yes, the Nord 3, it does seem to be the better phone, but is it worth 4,000 rupees or 8,000 rupees more? Now that is something only you can answer based on your priorities. But I'm gonna help you get there. Now if you don't see yourself as someone who pushes your phone too much, if your usage is usually very light, all you want is a comfortable phone with a good camera, then the H40 might make sense to you. That 256 gig storage, the IP rating and wireless charging support, that would just be icing on the cake. On the other hand, if you want the best bang for your buck, the most performance for the money you pay, if you don't mind having a boxy phone, the higher capacity battery, the much better display, the flagship chip, the extra year of support, if you find these things important, then the 4 to 8,000 rupees extra might be worth paying. So that's my 2 cents. Thanks for watching. Have a nice day. Bye bye.